This is the Blairing Out with Eric Blair show today with legendary guitarist and founding member of the Offspring, Noodles. How you doing today, Noodles?
Doing good, Eric. Good to see you, man.
We're going to take a walk down memory lane to start off with. What was your youth like growing up in Garden Grove, California?
Oh, it was idyllic. Gosh, I haven't thought about being a kid so much lately. You're growing up in suburbia. I had a younger brother, younger sister, lived with my mom and dad. I was just kind of like this skinny, nerdy kid with really thick glasses. And I got picked on a lot and just kind of didn't fit in. You know, I wasn't preppy. I wasn't, even before preppy, I wasn't preppy. I wasn't a jock. I liked skateboarding and surfing, and eventually I learned to like punk rock music. But yeah, just kind of a nerdy, skinny kid who didn't fit in.
Did you get in any trouble?
I did, but nothing too major. Mostly I just pissed off my teachers because I kept questioning them. And if a teacher said something that I didn't think was right, I'd raise my hand. I'm sorry, I don't think that's right, and so I got in a lot of trouble for that, just for opening my mouth. But it was good trouble to get into, I think.
What kind of trouble did you and Dexter Holland get into during your time as Manic Subsidal?
Probably mostly getting the neighbor to call the cops on us at 10 o'clock at night when we were still making loud music at our bass player's house at the time. I know we got pulled over by the cops one time on the way out. That might have been Offspring at that point, though. Got pulled over by the cops, but they let us go. We were all drinking beer in the back of the van. This is funny, actually, because we stopped at a Burger King on our way out, and we all had the crowns on, like the paper crowns, right? And Dexter forgot that he had it on, and he's driving his dad's van, and we're in the back hiding the beers as the cops pull us over. It was because of a light on the trailer. And the cops get him out, and he goes back, and he's got the crown on, and we're all just dying laughing as he's got his crown on, dealing with the cops, and they discuss the trailer and what to do. And I can't remember if they fixed it or they just said, yeah, get it fixed, but they let us go. And I mean, we're all pretty nice Orange County kids. We don't get into bad trouble. We're not violent. We're not scary. And the cops looked at us and went, oh, these guys are harmless. We don't even care if they're drinking beer in the van. And they let us go.
When you think of punk rock and you think of the birth of a band that's punk rock, you always think that they're really rebelling against authority extreme. I mean, did you...
We knew some guys. We knew some guys that have done some things that, would definitely cause the cops to take notice of what they were doing. Like I said, most of our trouble was making loud noise when we shouldn't, and drinking too much beer in places where we probably shouldn't have been drinking beer. But, we took it to a certain limit, and then we went, okay, we don't want to spend the night in jail. But we did pick up a lot of our friends. We did go pick them up at the police station quite a bit.
You guys can't hold a candle to Jack Grisham.
I didn't want to name names, but yeah, any of the TSOL guys. I mean, those guys were legitimately scary dudes. They're all 6'5", beefy dudes. So yeah, they were legitimately scary guys. Sweethearts now, they've all kind of, okay, we've done we've lived our other lives. Now we're getting down to being family guys. And
yeah,
they still put on a hell of a show, though. Still play great punk rock. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think Jack's proud of his past in a way. In
a way, yeah. I mean, he certainly doesn't shy away from it. He's written books about it. So yeah.
American Demon was scary and amazing.
Yeah.
So walk us through the timeline of you being in Clowns of Death to joining Manic Subsidal, and then the name changed to Offspring.
Yeah, Clowns of Death was a project that I'd started with a friend, Aaron, and James, our drummer, and then a singer, Mike Molinex. And James who was the drummer. I'd known him. He really hung out with my brother. He was Dexter's age, same age as my brother. And so I knew all those guys, but I was a little bit ahead. But so I started playing music with those guys. It was fun, but we were terrible. Our songs weren't good. And at one point we had Dexter come join us in Clowns of Death in my parents' living room. It was the first time Dexter ever played with a full band live, and he loved it. And so then he and James also started doing what was Manic Subsidal at the time. And then Dexter asked me to play in with that group. And I went, wow, these songs are way better than what we got in Clowns of Death. And I just started playing with them. And then, Clowns of Death just never did anything. I think we played one party. and that was it. And then started doing more and more with the Offspring. Well, what would become the Offspring, Manic Subsidal, and then ultimately the Offspring.
How important were the underground punk magazines Flipside and Maximum Rock and Roll to the exposure of the Offspring?
Those magazines were huge. Both Maximum Rock and Roll and Flipside especially were the two biggest ones. One had certainly more of a hippie bent. That's Maximum Rock and Roll, very socialist and, youthful. And I love that stuff to a certain extent. I took issue with some of the things they said, but for the most part, I really loved that stuff. And then Flipside was just dark, dingy clubs. The magazine reeked of beer and clove cigarettes and leather. But you had scene reports from around the country. Maximum Rock and Roll had scene reports from around the world. Really, they had people riding in from all over the place. But that's how you found out what was happening, in other cities, other states, and other countries. So that was those magazines were huge for anyone in the scene that wanted to kind of if you wanted to plan a tour, there was no internet. You would go in the back of the back parts of those pages. Who's putting on shows in Racine, Wisconsin, or Raleigh, North Carolina, and you'd slowly map out a tour that way.
What do you remember about getting the deal with Nemesis Records?
It was kind of an exciting thing. There wasn't really. We knew we weren't making any money, but we were going to put out a record that we hoped somebody would actually spend the time trying to distribute. I know that we took a lot when we would tour and go out on weekend shows. We took a lot of the copies out with us and sold them, and then we had to pay back the record company for a lot of that. There was no money to be made in punk rock, but it was still cool to have this record that you could hold up with the Mad Mark Rude artwork, which I never was super crazy about. It seemed a little more metal to me, a little more rudimentary peni. Than the kind of stuff I was into, more Pusshead or whatever. But still cool, and it was still exciting. That was the back of my hand on the back cover of that. Is you can see the veins, the kind of tree of veins. That's the back cover of that record.
Dexter really wanted Tom Wilson to produce, and I heard he actually tracked him down. He was working on the Roseanne Barr show doing sound at the time.
I don't remember how he did. I know that he did. I mean, Tom had done some of our favorite records. The TSOL record, Dance With Me. I think he did Adolescence, and I know he did some Dead Kennedys work as well. And I'm not a technical guy. I love a good guitar riff, and good vocals and, heavy drums and stuff, but I don't know about production. I still don't, at this point. I've been doing it for 35 years now. I still don't know how production works. But Tom was great. I loved working with him. As soon as we started connecting, he was just a really nice guy, and he just had neat ideas about how to work in the studio and really what it means to make music and to be a band. And that's where I think his production was the most helpful.
The albums that he worked on, what your memories are from being in the studio during those periods. 1989's The Offspring debut.
Yeah, we had a studio that we'd actually worked at a couple of times just on our own. Jim Dotson was the owner of the studio. It was South Coast.
Yeah,
South Coast. It was in Santa Ana. It was right off 18th Street, kind of over by the old Guitar Center that used to be there, but kind of in around. You had to catty corner and back behind this building, and it was just a little studio, kind of almost probably not even as big as this. What we're here now. But it was a blast going in, and then we've done a couple of things there, demos and stuff, and then I think, did we do the first single there? I think we might have done the first single, Black Ball and I'll Be Waiting, at Jim's studio. That was even his first place, and then the one in Santa Ana was where we did the main record, and by then we were working with Tom, and we got Tom to come out, and I don't remember our first meeting with him. Tom was just kind of, okay, now we're working with Tom. He's I really loved the guy. I mean, he really was just a neat guy. Kind of spiritual, kind of trippy, and like I said, just a good heart and had good sense about what it means to be a band, and how to make a band work. So I liked him from that standpoint.
Legend says that Tom Wilson really wanted you guys to sign with Epitaph.
Maybe. I know we had wanted Brett to work with us, from probably the first time we met him. We knew what he was doing in his label and the bands that he was signing, and we knew that this was that would be a good home for us. Mm-hmm. He's doing really good things for the scene and for those bands, and we thought that would be a neat family to be a part of. So we hit him up hard. I know Dexter was always kind of hitting him up. I don't know if it was during the Baghdad EP or when we were working on the compilation song that we did. Dexter beat him at chess. And he was like, he beat Brett at chess. He was like, I don't know if I should let him win, so that he'll sign us, or should I beat him? And ultimately Dexter's competitive nature got the better of him, and he beat Brett at chess, and that made Brett go, oh, this guy's not an idiot. Yeah. So I think ultimately beating Brett at chess got more notice than if he would have lost to him.
Then you get signed to Epitaph and you do the Ignition album. What's going through your mind at that point in your life?
Oh, man. Well, we were still just, an underground punk rock band. I mean, I think what did we sell? Like 1,500 copies of the first record, 600 of the first single, maybe 500 of the first single. Well, I think we pressed 1,000 of those, so there must have been some out there. We probably gave away as many as we sold. We were still just kind of hoping to slowly build. It certainly wasn't a career move yet, but we were, I think, getting more notice within the scene, and just wanted to play more, do more shows. It was still just our hobby. That was what we did on summer vacation and weekends. So we didn't really know what to expect when Ignition came out. I do remember it was the first time we ever had a CD of what we played, and we were drinking beer in Dexter's backyard. His parents must have been gone. We're still 20s something and early 20s, and we put in like 5 different CDs, like Creedence Clearwater, Social Distortion, and The Offspring, and it would just come in, it would switch it around, and we'd hear one of our songs and somebody else's song, and it was just kind of funny to be able to do that. But I remember that was a big deal for us. I remember the artwork was a big deal. We really spent a lot of time in the artwork. We knew that it was a step up from the last record that we had done, and we were stoked to be on Epitaph. I mean, we really did like Brett, and what he was doing.
For $20,000, you make this $1 million record. 1994 Smash was $20,000, and you guys were milking it for every...
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Mind blown when it sells.
Before it came out, I mean, we were spending, and I'm going to take your word that that's the number that we spent on it. I don't know what the number was. But we didn't have a lot of money. So we were working, mostly we did it, I think, at Trax Studios, and it was in like North Hollywood or the Valley or somewhere. And we could only go in, and I think it was Tom that liked this studio, and he hooked us up. But we had to do it like, hey, you got anybody coming in? Can we get the studio for half price? Sure. Until then, we were finishing up, and then I think they cut us a deal and and let us finish it up. But we had to go in on the fly, when nobody else was in, so that we could get it cheaply, and spent the time to do it right. And we were all working and going to school at the time. We didn't expect the record to take off the way it did, when we were working. So like late at night, I worked. Now at the time I was working days, so I'd go in there in the afternoon and work till 1, 2 in the morning, and then I'd be at work at 6:30 the next morning to be a janitor, open up the school for the kids and the teachers. And then eventually one day I'm at work, it's towards the end of that cycle, and I have kids walking back, and we've got a video on MTV. We spent $5,000, I know this, on a video that got heavy rotation. This is around the time when, Guns N' Roses was spending millions of dollars on a video. We spent $5,000, and we're being played right next to those guys on MTV. And kids are walking by, and I'm sweeping up in the morning at the school, and kids are going, man, I just saw you on TV. What are you doing? I promised my boss, the principal at the school, I would finish out the school year, and she was working with me, letting me take the odd Friday or Monday off so we could go out and do some local shows as things were building. I got to go to Alaska. That was when the record came out. Actually, we were in Alaska playing a snowboarding contest up there. That was a fun trip with Pennywise. They were headlining too. It wasn't us. So yeah, it was a heady time. Things were really taking off. And then by that June, I was able to quit my job, and then we just went on a full year and a half of touring after that.
Would you consider yourself to be a humble person?
I've been thinking about this. A lot of people say that I'm humble, but really I just have a massive inferiority complex. I really do. I always have. I've just never believed that I was ever going to amount to anything. So to be able to do what I do for a living, it's a gift. Yeah, I'm just very thankful for it.
Then how did you take the impact of this worldwide success of Smash? Because you are now a brand, and right, people are being employed by you.
I think a big dose of denial. I always loved making music, listening to music, playing music, and I always thought, I love it as a hobby. I don't know if I'd like it to be my job, but once Smash took off, we realized, okay, man, we got to pick up this ball and run with it. Can we score a touchdown, and then it was, can we score another touchdown? But I never really thought of it as a business. Of course it is. The band is responsible for not just us, but now, like you said, managers, crew, all the guys on tour, the local crew, there's a lot of people we are responsible for. I don't think about that. I just think about, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to play music, and I'm going to have a good time. I trust our managers and accountants to do the right thing, and if somebody's not doing the right thing, then it's time to move on. We've been blessed that most of the people we work with have all been really decent, good-hearted people, over the years.
The Blairing Out Show.
Dexter has a PhD in microbiology. Am I correct?
That is correct. He got that. I think he finished up his PhD in 2017.
Because you can't really trust anybody in this business.
You shouldn't. Dexter's, I think, very much business oriented, where I am not. He's also very, very creative oriented. And really knows his way around the studio and music. I mean, he's the principal songwriter, so he's really got his head around that. I think he also pays pretty close attention to where the dollars are going.
So you're fortunate to have a friend like him.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And I trust him, but, maybe even more than I should, but I do. I trust him for sure.
Well, you got to trust somebody.
Yeah.
And he's the guy.
Yeah.
So describe the 1989 incident where you were stabbed by a skinhead during the Offspring anti-nuclear benefit in Hollywood.
Yeah, it was actually Final Conflict and anti-nuclear benefit. Yeah, we were, I think, the middle of the bill. We played it kind of early, and Final Conflict was headlining. Bulimia Banquet was on there, and I think there was 2 or 3 other bands. There was 5 of us all together, I think, that night. And some skinheads decided that they weren't gonna, they couldn't let these peaceniks have their show, so they started crap at the front of the door. And I saw this tussle happening between the doorman. I can't remember his name. Dreaded hippie anti-nuclear guy. And when I say dreaded, I mean dreadlocked. Yeah, because I liked him. I thought he was a nice guy. But he was getting beat up pretty good, and so I walked up, and he was trying to hold a table up against the door to keep these guys out. And so I shoved the table up against the door, and I go, "It's over, it's over." And all of a sudden, I thought I got hit, like somebody hit me with something in the shoulder, because it felt like somebody hit me with a bar or something. And I just hold up my hands. I go, "It's over." I looked the guy right in the eye. It might have been the beer, coursing, and the beer and adrenaline. I didn't feel it right away. And then they all take off running. The guys leave. And so then I go, "Oh man, what did he hit me with?" And I take off my jacket, and I realize, oh, that was a knife. That wasn't a stick or something. But he missed all the good parts. No tendons were cut. It was just stitches. I couldn't lift my arm for a couple weeks, but then I was fine.
Is that the most radical thing that ever happened to you as far as physical harm?
It was probably one of the most violent incidents I was ever involved in. I've been involved in brawls and stuff like that before, but the first time a knife was ever involved. I've hurt myself way worse doing other stupid stuff, skateboarding, and I shattered my elbow skateboarding. Wow. So yeah, I've had as many stitches from surfing accidents as I had from that guy, really.
Did you ever have kryptonic wheels on your skateboard?
I had Powerflex. I was really into Powerflex wheels. I had a Dogtown board. I was so proud of that. And my brother let a friend of his borrow my board, and his dad ran it over in the driveway. I was so angry, man. It's a Dogtown board. You broke my Dogtown board.
So how did your working relationship with Brett Gurewitz and Epitaph Records, and everybody knows Brett Gurewitz was, in Bad Religion, how did that change after the success of Smash?
Yeah, unfortunately, the relationship went south. I think there's no secret there. Brett felt that the label had done a good job for us, and we felt like we had done a good job for the label. And moving forward, we felt like we were owed a little bit more than what he was willing to offer us. And it's just one of those things. The relationship went sour. I think Brett's been pretty honest about where he was in his life at the time. He was not in a good place at the time. So we worked out a deal to the next record, which was Ixnay on the Hombre after Smash, came out on Epitaph in Europe, and then we moved to Sony everywhere else. Columbia Records everywhere else, which was a subsidiary of Sony. We really wanted desperately to stick with Epitaph. We felt really strongly about being part of that community was a great thing, and we did the whole cycle of Smash. Mm-hmm. We were spending our money promoting that record. We're hiring people, to radio guys, PR people. We spent a lot of our own resources pushing that, things that would normally be what the label would be technically responsible for, and we did a lot of it on our own. That was part of the reason why, moving forward, we felt like we deserved a little bit more than what Brett was willing to give us. But he was going by, I think, what he was meeting with Richard Branson, and Richard Branson was telling him what Richard Branson would do. Yeah. So it was rough for everybody. It was no fun at all. It was a big, messy divorce, and it sucked. It's all water under the bridge now, and we've made our amends with Brett. It's all brotherly love now. And we did Ixnay on the Hombre and Americana with Dave Jordan, and Dave was great. It was two different studios. One was off Sunset when we did Ixnay on the Hombre, and then he moved to Burbank when we did Americana. I know it was El Dorado was the name of the second one. I can't remember. I think the first one was also called that. We're working with a different producer who also had ideas about making music and being in a band, but really he loved guitars and guitar sounds. He was a guitar player and loved old guitars, and so he was one of the he had way more knowledge on that than I would say Tom Wilson did. Tom kind of taught us how to be a band, I think, and Jordan taught us how to use the studio technically a little bit better.
Ixnay on the Hombre doesn't do as well as Smash, but then you come back with Americana and you just rip everybody's faces off, right, essentially. I mean, you guys are the biggest band in the world. You can't turn on the radio or MTV without seeing your video.
Tell Green Day that. Americana did great. Ixnay, we had a great tour on that, but yeah, it only sold like 3 million worldwide. So huge flop compared to Smash, which was like at 11 or 12 at that point, But then with Americana, we went and I think even surpassed what Smash had done. And yeah, people got sick of us. Pretty Fly for a White Guy, like all the old punks hated us for that one. And it got, that was the song that was retired on MTV because it got too much play on MTV on Total Request Live or whatever. So they retired that song. And, we still got to play it live every night, and it's a fun song. But yeah, Pretty Fly, I can see why, and maybe even to a lesser extent, Get a Job. Get a Job wasn't really a punk song. There's some punk attitude in it, but it's not really an aggressive punk song. So a lot of our punk fans got pissed off, but those songs are still fun.
And during this time, when you're like the biggest rock star in the world, and of course Green Day would, of course.
I think Limp Bizkit, those bands were all starting to bust out around those times. Yeah. So Korn, Korn was huge too. So yeah, a lot of that stuff was the new metal, I guess is what they were calling it back then. I mean, that was really kind of taken over. So when we'd go out and play, we were all opening up for those guys.
Any memories that stand out from that Americana tour?
We did Woodstock, and we opened up right before Korn at Woodstock. It was night one of the Woodstock 99. It was this Air Force base that was just miserably hot.
When you got there, you didn't see the chaos beginning to brew at all.
No, it wasn't like that yet. Dexter had a King Air at the time, and we flew in with our pilot. Oh, we were on tour with the Dickies and the Living End at the time. That was a great tour. Both those bands were great. And the Dickies, I've been a huge Dickies fan my whole life, and so it was an honor. I was going out and playing Gigantor with them at the end. That was a blast. Living End, watching Chris Chaney play every night, phenomenal guitar player, and they put on just a great show. But so then we get to Woodstock, and I had quit drinking for about a year and a half, and I'd quit smoking for 2.5 years at that point. And Woodstock, I started smoking that night. Like, we had this pilot, and I'm like, I didn't know you smoked. He goes, I only smoke occasionally. And I'm like, I could probably do that now. Oh, no. I was back to a pack and a half, like, within a week, and started drinking. And I was back up to, 6-pack a day, within a day.
So you guys got in and got out.
We flew in over the King Air, and we actually got to look down on the grounds and everything. It looked kind of peaceful. It just looked like a lot of people, but there was no shade, no trees, and so that was what was rough. I think there was nowhere for anyone to get out from that heat, and it just was a heat wave that weekend, and I think that just killed people, just destroyed them.
Did you bond with any of the other bands?
I think we knew Korn probably the best. The ones we played with the most and got to know were Pennywise and NoFX. We went way back with those guys. Rancid did a bunch of shows with them in the 90s. Bands like that were the ones that we bonded with most. The Vandals. No Use for a Name. We did a great tour with them. It's kind of like summer camp. You go out on tour with these guys. You're really close. You're tight. You make friends with everyone. But then you don't see them for a couple years. Then you happen to see them at a festival. It's like, oh, hey, how's it going? It's like we're back at camp again.
What is the secret to the longevity of your friendship and working relationship with Dexter Holland?
Oh, man, I don't know. I honestly don't. It's not something I really, think about or question so much. We grew up sharing a love of a similar kind of music. I think we got a similar sense of humor. I think we both like science. I'm not as studied as he is, but I do appreciate it. So we'll have discussions about that. We don't talk politics, but there's plenty of other things to talk about. We do occasionally have our discussions, usually after way too many beers, and so the good thing about that is we don't remember the discussions the next day. Too much of it.
So how have you kept your head in rock and roll while others are losing theirs?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. I've thought about that a little bit because I've had friends that, and I like to drink. But whenever my drinking, I think, is getting kind of out of hand, I've always been able to pull it back, and quit for, months at a time. And I've had friends that weren't able to do that until they absolutely had to, and even worse things than just alcohol. Although alcohol is about as bad as it gets. It really is if you get in deep enough. Yeah, I don't know how I've been able to. And who knows? I mean, maybe I'm flattering myself. Maybe my head's not as screwed on as tight as I'd like to think it is, I mean, you don't know what I'm going to do as soon as I leave here, What am I going to do when I get home and get into and, scream and rage at or whatever?
Well, there's a lot to be said for a career that's almost 40 years.
Yeah.
And you've done very well. Usually people fall to the wayside.
I think the key is, and Dexter's like this too. Dexter takes the craft seriously. Like when he's working on a song, he takes it seriously. But once he releases it to the world, there's nothing serious about that anymore. It's just a song. It's not world peace. It's not brain surgery. Nobody's life is in your hands. You're hoping that your music touches people and either makes them, smile or helps them commiserate with us. A song can touch you in a sad way, make you feel loss and stuff, but make you also feel like that loss is survivable. Make you angry about the world, but make you feel like, okay, it's not just me. Others are getting this too, or just, laugh. Hassan Chop's kind of about a serious subject, the Middle East, but also kind of makes you like, oh, okay, we'll get through this. So I think we realize what we're doing is entertainment. It's not that serious, and it shouldn't be taken that serious. And if you are taking yourself and the things you say that seriously, then maybe you do need to kind of check yourself.
How would you define the word punk rock, and how do you think the meaning has changed over your time in the Offspring?
Well, the meaning hasn't really changed much for me. I think how people perceive punk and what from a as a social movement or an artistic viewpoint has changed maybe, but for me punk has always just meant to question really everything. If somebody tells you must do something, you want to, well, why must I do that? Maybe you'll want to do it, but it's good to question why or why not. If somebody tells you can't do something, well, why can't I do that? I don't see why I can't do this. There's no harm in it, as long as you're not hurting people, right? It's about, and really just kind of defying convention, questioning authority always, always question authority. Sometimes you might end up agreeing with that authority, but you got to question it. That's really what it means to me. But there's also something spiritual about punk rock, and I kind of liken it to, I've said this before, it's like Buddhahood. It's something you're always trying to achieve, but you might not ever get there. And that's how, like when you're a Buddhist, you're always trying to attain something, but you may not get to nirvana or satori or whatever the word you want to call it. So I think punk rock to me is kind of like that. It's something you always got to kind of keep on your toes, always try to be creative and not just fall in the rut, do things that shake up your routine. To me, that's what it means.
Don't you think that in the last year that the punk rock ethos has changed?
Within the punk rock community, there's there's been, screaming liberals, vegan, I will not be wearing leather. And there's also been skinheads with the big boots, and, they can't wait to just kick some heads in and, make those laces red. There's always been those two competing sides, I think. And, on one hand, that danger always kind of made the punk rock scene more attractive to me. The fact that I might get my ass kicked, or get in a brawl or whatever, when I go to see one of my favorite bands play. I tried not to. I tried to avoid. I remember being at Fender's Ballroom and just being, okay, there's certain corners here. And there was a lot of gang element too at the time, so there's, you have your conservative and you have your, liberal progressives in that movement. So there's always kind of been that in punk rock, and it's funny to see some of my contemporaries who started out very kind of liberal and forward-leaning, and now all of a sudden they're very, on their heels and like, whoa.
The Blairing Out Show.